but no ether.
You finally flipped.
Well, I have a question, but it kind of backs up the whole
No,
thing.
please.
When I think of the Higgs,
Yeah.
it makes sense to me as a field. In fact, it makes sense to me as the substrate for the entire universe, right? If there would be an ether, in my mind, I see it as the Higgs field.
That's what I see.
You
I
see it
see a
too?
crystal and ether. The density and the elasticity determines the speed of light. That's why light can change.
It depends on the medium. Because we say the speed of light in a vacuum, quote unquote. So, yeah, well, that's.
This is the way the waves
Wait a second. Are you saying and admitting that there's a medium?
Yeah.
How dare you?
This is what I see.
Well, that's one of those things where it's like, okay, we say speed of light in a vacuum, but then when you talk to different folks, it's like, well, what's the vacuum? Well, it's actually rife with frothing virtual particles, and there's an energy density to it. And I'm like, so there's no true vacuum? Or, I don't know. It's like, I'm part Irish, so I think I can make the no true Irishman joke. So something like that. That's just kind of the vibe I get there. And I'm just like, you can say space-time, fabric of reality, perhaps a superfluid, but no ether. It's a 5-letter word.
But so
Maybe 6.
The question I have is, the Higgs field makes sense to me.
Okay.
But I have no idea what a Higgs boson is, because when I look, from my point of view, I'm looking at what information does it carry and how does it interact with the other particles. I only have a placeholder in my library because the Higgs makes no sense to me as a particle. And then I'm wondering if you have some way of explaining it to me where I can have any meaning out of it.
See, when you were describing what you were utilizing, I think gravity for within your physics library, there is, it almost sounded like you had things kind of like almost popping out there from that. Now that doesn't really seem like a gravitational effect as far as we know. However, if the Higgs is at least attributed, or whatever we attribute the Higgs to be, to help give mass to other particles, I'm like, well, if you have an energy density surfusing all this different stuff, I'm like, well, maybe, could it be the vacuum? I don't know.
But that would mean that there's got to be some transformation where the Higgs...
It means you have to think of your field as actually being a lattice. And the base cell of the lattice is the Higgs.
That's why it's a crystal and ether.
Oh.
Okay, but then what I'm still missing is there must be some transformation. If the Higgs gives particles mass, where is that transformation?
The Higgs mechanism. I still need to learn more about it and everything.
In each of the cells of the lattice. So any wave that moves through that lattice by going through a cell gets transformed by getting mass or getting rid of mass, depends on which way it went through.
My base rudimentary explanation, or at least from what I've read, and feel free to correct me, I do need to learn a heck of a lot more math and actual setup to this, is usually there's some form of a rotation or something. And very often the way we do rotations is we do e to the I pi and everything, which is one of the reasons why I saw one of those ratios that I just erased over there, where it's like, well, if this ratio between these different top quark and the Z boson, if there was something to it being a ratio of e to the pi or e to 1 over pi, that's interesting. It's also, you could rewrite that as, I think, like negative I to the I or something like that. There's a correspondence there, which I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of similar to what Thad was saying. So should this be surprising? Should it not be? Long story short, Echelon, I got a lot more work to do.
Anyway, I want to say, used to book.
Yeah, one more thing is that since mass has a direct relationship to gravity and the Higgs has a direct relationship to mass, then there must be some relationship between Higgs and gravity. And if there is a graviton, it would be somehow related to a Higgs boson.
Good.
Yes.
All those relationships, when we start graphing, we can use graph theory to put this together.
And again, we also need to be careful because a lot of times as human beings, we also have certain expectations about things. So we want to be careful and just acknowledge when we're making an expectation. That's why I gave it such a crazy name, like the spherical God cow. It's obviously a joke. The only reason why I kind of see it as that is just because like you're taking something that people in general vernacular say, oh yeah, that God, you say the Higgs boson, it's like, what was that? Oh, that God particle thing. Oh yeah. And then we're just applying the whole concept of literally treating it like a spherical cow, and it seemed to match the data pretty well. Again, it gave a dimensionless number. What that dimensionless number means, you would have to multiply it by meters squared, but then at that point, it's like, you're assuming the meter would have some significance, which I can say it's based upon the constants of nature, but I'm like, did nature know to do that? How the heck could it do that? And that's an interesting open question that I think that hopefully sooner rather than later we'll be able to figure out what's going on.